Hi there. Continuing our series on Special Force units, we come to the German unit GSG-9, and the book, the English version, GSG-9 German Response to Terrorism by Rolf Tophoven, and there was an original German edition as well. This was formed in response to the attack on the Israeli athlete at the Munich Olympics in 1972 by the Palestinian terrorists. And the German police response was woeful, and it was a big wake-up call, and the German authorities decided to form a special unit to cope with terrorism, which they rightly foresaw was going to be a problem. And they were faced with both Middle Eastern terrorism and also their own domestic terrorism from the Rose Army faction. And the 72 Olympics was also the genesis of the SAS dusting off their plans for a counter-terrorist team and starting their own setup. So it was a very significant event. The German constitution meant that the military couldn't operate against the civil population or within the borders, and the only real federal police agency they had was the Grenzschutz, the border police. So there was 8 units, and they formed a 9th as the special unit, or the SWAT, or counter-terrorism unit, and it was commanded by Ulrich Wegener, the original commander, and it was set up with a selection process, big emphasis on fitness, on martial arts, formal martial arts. They did karate, weapons handling, obviously, and they also had a really impressive array of equipment. Helicopters, very specialist vehicles, including modified Mercedes, and these influenced other units, particularly in the United States. They also had some specialist abseiling equipment, and the guy who invented one of them came over to the UK to demonstrate. It was the e-car device to the guys at Hereford, and he was supposed to do it from a helicopter, but the helicopter was delayed, so they used the abseil tower, and the rope broke. It uses a special line, rather thin line, and it broke, and he fell, and fortunately he wasn't killed. Needless to say, the guys in the squadrons weren't really that impressed with the device. So the training area that 9 used was a former munitions factory, munitions area, and similarly the SAS, their training area was an old munitions depot. Lots of old buildings, very thick, suitable for climbing, for doing house assaults and that kind of thing, bunkers and all sorts of things. So the book has lots of very good photographs, and it shows some of the equipment and so on. It covers most of the areas that you would expect. Now, GSG-9 had their famous operation in Mogadishu when a Lufthansa commercial aircraft was hijacked, and again it was Palestinian terrorists, and it ended up in Mogadishu, and the team followed it and effected a rescue, Operation Magic Fire. And it was a success, and the guys stormed the aircraft wearing jeans and training shoes, and many of them carried just revolvers. So it was early days. They pulled it off, which shows that the personnel are more important than the equipment in many cases. It then led to them getting a lot of training gigs, training other countries in the in hostage rescue. Just as an aside, it's pretty well known the SAS offered assistance, and two of the guys went with the German team and were part of the actual rescue, particularly supplying stun grenades. And Barry Davis, who was one of the guys, has written a book about it, so we'll probably get around to having a look at that at some stage. So couple of points. Lofty gave a talk on the setting up of special units and so on to on a counter-terrorist course in the United States, and a point he made was the difference between the military and the police version, because some of the countries, France for example, uses police, and he says that the fact that in the military the guys kind of live together 24 hours in a barracks, they all know each other, there's a big bond, can make a difference. And also with the SAS, they rotate between the squadrons onto the counter-terrorist role, whereas the police unit just tends to do counter-terrorism, and it can become very, very stale. Whereas the guys are going through all the other facets that they do, doing overseas tasks and so on, which keeps them fresh. Another point is that in the German setup, each land or state had its own SWAT team or SEK, and they were rather reluctant to call in the feds. They kind of handled it themselves. They had these expensively trained teams who were, for the most part, very competent, handled most of the domestic problems. But of course, GSG-9 had a worldwide remit and could operate overseas. Today, the Grenzpolizei has been renamed. It's now just the Federal Police. But they've retained GSG-9 as the title for legacy reasons, because it's such a famous unit. And the book really does show the genesis of it. That's a picture from the Mogadishu operation, the team coming back and so on, and the history and profiles of the early commanders. And it's very thorough, and it's a really good addition to the library on the subject.